welcome to the third episode of Isip Isak for the year 2023. We are coming in with fresh topics and speaking to current contexts with old and new friends who will join us here at Isip Isak. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am Zara, and tonight I will be joined by another Isaac folk. She holds a master's degree in social justice and merges her background in marketing and communications with her interest in societal transformation. In short, magaling, mapagmahal, at makadiyos ang kasama ko ngayong gabing ito. Join me in welcoming a very dear friend and the person who introduced me to Isaac, my co-moderator tonight, Naji Chua. Hi, Naji! So glad we're facilitating tonight's conversation together.
Hi, Zara. I'm so excited to be here also, and thank you for having me. Ang bait-bait mo talaga sa akin forever. And especially in light of our topic in change making and with our special guests tonight, I'm more than happy to co-moderate this with you. Kasi natandaan ko, last time pinanood ko yung episode natin where we invited three friends no to share about their experience of martial law as children. So, ngayon, ano mangyayari? Anong ine-expect natin, Zara?
Ayun. Ngayong gabi, we continue to revisit history. Ito yung theme natin ngayong February. Pero ngayong gabi naman, we're going to be talking about learnings from decades of change making. From someone who's been working for change even before martial law. And actually also from someone who's continued to work for change even as we speak right now. So we're going to be hearing perspectives on change making. So if you're watching now and have not yet shared the link to tonight's conversation with your family and friends, kabarkada, kapamilya, kamag-anak, share nyo na. Hindi pa tayo nagsisimula. May time pa kayong mag-gather. Tingnan nga natin, meron ba tayong mga listeners na or watchers online?
Meron ba?
Tingnan ko kung meron ba tayong mga shoutouts. Wala pa. So, we're still waiting for our watchers, but if you're there, if you have any shoutouts, also, if you have any questions for our speakers tonight, you can type them in and we'll see if we can answer them before this evening's show ends. So just type them in and we will make sure to get back to you whether tonight or on Facebook or whatever platform you added your questions to. So, if you're watching naman for the first time, ang Isip Isak is actually brought to you by the Institute for Studies in Asian Church and Culture or Isaac. Ito ang ating conversations on faith and society.
So, Isaac, as it's more popularly known, shares biblical perspectives on social issues in the public square using traditional and social media as part of its work in advocacy as well as popular education for good governance. Yeah, and so if you want to learn a little bit more about Isaac, you can follow us on our social media platforms as well as visit our website. It's isaac.global. And we just want to say hi. I think may nakita na akong comment, Zara, to Veronica from Mandaluyong. Hello kay Ian De Ocampo. Hello po, Pastor. And hello to Charles, who is watching from Leyte. Hi.
Hello, Veronica, Pastor Ian, and Charles. Hello, everyone. We hope that you've settled in and are ready. Ano, Naji? Ready ka na ba? Kapit lang. We're revisiting history and listening to learnings on change making with Professor Mary Racelis.
Oh my goodness. Mary Racelis, Professor Mary Racelis, she's a living legend. I'm so excited to be here.
Since you're so excited, Naji, why don't you introduce the professor?
What an honor. So Professor Mary Racelis is a sociologist. She's an anthropologist. She's a research scientist and a specialist in the development sector. She's the former director of the Institute of Philippine Culture, and she's currently teaching in UP and Ateneo, sociology and anthropology, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, right? And I heard she broke glass ceilings way before the term was coined, and she was the first female professor at Ateneo in 1960. appreciate ko talaga the time you're giving us at Isip Isak tonight, Professor Mary. I know that with you, you have a guest. Will you tell us about who's with you tonight?
I mean, I'm very happy to introduce Bea Bacason, who is, well, she is a communications person, and I just discovered that she's now also into development studies at the Ateneo de Manila, which is where we first met. Although I think of her, or used to think of her as my student, now I think of her as my colleague because we work together in a youth equity program, which maybe she can talk to you about, where we're trying to work with urban poor young people to see where do they want to go with their lives. So she has many qualifications, including that she loves cats. So they have so many that I agreed to adopt two of them, which I have.
Wow.
We have many connections between Bea and me.
Welcome, Bea. It's so nice to have you tonight. And I see that we're going to be hearing perspectives from different spectrums, and we're so excited for that.
Yes, just echoing what Zara said. Thank you so much, Bea and Professor Mary, for being here tonight. We can't wait to dive into this discussion. So let's get to it, but let's start with something simple. What would you say, for both of you, is the significance of history, and why do you think it's worth revisiting?
Oh yeah, isang mag-beta question naman yon. So, na I looked up sa internet, kasi may definite or significance I can talk about it, but ano bang sinabi ng mga iba who have long been in this field? And just so I can communicate with our audience, what other people think about history, and then what do we think about history, and what does Bea in particular think about history? So yung isa naman, let me just quote 3 or 4, because I think it's interesting to see yung sinasabi ng revisionist, ano ba yung revisionist history? No? Anyway, so yung isa said, if you want to understand today, you have to search yesterday. Yun, ganda yun. There's a connection between how we see today and yung dati. Then, second, history is who we are and why we are the way we are. Yan, parang a little complicated, pero it gives you the idea. Now, history hindi yan something far away, pero yun, it's part of our everyday lives. No? Yung isa, many of us know this one. Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Diba? Narinig na niyo yung school siguro. But the one I really like, yung akin, what's the significance of history that really yung sinabing na appeals to me? Ito naman. If people do little things, if they walk on the picket line, if they join a vigil, if they write a letter to their local newspaper, anything they do, however small, becomes part of a much larger sort of flow of energy. Right? And when enough people do enough things, however small they are, then change takes place. Ang ganda yun, no? Dapat isipin yun. And maybe you can maybe translate that into Filipino while I'm thinking about the next part, para you can repeat it, because it's quite important, I think, yung idea na everyday life, people make history, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
so siguro, maybe I think maybe Bea, you should give your own, what's the significance of history for young people? Because we want to appeal, especially to the young people who are now watching us, for you to think, what is your role in history? And baka si Bea can help you much more than I, siguro na. Remember, 1960, ako yung first woman professor. 1960, yung mga lolo na ninyo, hindi pa, born, no? So, Bea.
I would love to hear from you, Bea.
Sige, ako rin, Prof. Mary, may pa-quote din ako. Ready din ako sa mga quotes na yan. So this is from Rebecca Solnit. She's an author and an activist. So it struck me because she said, if you actually look at the most beautiful parts of our history, its mass movements, its collectives, its groundwells. So galing talaga siya sa baba. It's not just the experts. It comes from the ordinary people like us. And I guess that's why history, pwede mo siya gamitin talaga sa lahat ng field. Eh. Like, even as a communication major, di ba? When you try to communicate a message, you study your audience. And what does that entail? It means studying their history, studying their culture. So you really refer to what was chronicled about them. And second, you also look at the past communication strategies. Ano na ba yung ginawa sa kanila? And so, doon papasok yung history. In any field, kailangan talaga natin siya. Even in business, we study the data. We study the past sales, ano ba yung ginawa natin sa marketing, what went wrong, what went right. So ayun hindi lang siya not just the big picture, okay, this is what happened to our national heroes, these are the monuments. Nandun siya sa little things. And I think we as the youth, and I guess syempre pati na rin yung mga older generations, we need to appreciate those little things for us to be able to see the real value of history talaga as a society.
Agree.
Wow. That's great because yung sinabi kanina ni Professor Mary, yung history is who we are and why we are the way we are. 'Di ba parang kung sino tayo at paano tayo naging ganito. Pero sa sinabi naman ni Bea, sabi niya, it's the little things. May parte tayo kasi ginagawa natin yung storya ngayon sa pamumuhay natin, kung ano man yung kino-communicate. Kaya pala importante din pala tong information, 'di ba? Or how you are able to craft narratives or stories kasi yun yung nagdi-dictate siguro kung ano yung mga ginagawa natin ngayon na in the end, pag look back natin, nagiging history siya. So, that's such an important reminder. And alala ko yung previous episode natin na we heard from three Isaac friends about their experience during martial law. And natulala ako sa sinabi nung isang guest natin na sabi niya, martial law never ended. And then the more I looked at history and studied what happened then, I realized she was right because I look at the systems now or the way things are now, we're still continuing in the effects of what happened then. And it explains why we are the way we are, why things are the way they are. And so this is why tonight's conversation is so important. And so can we regular folk ba, being who we are, where we are, participate in change? I think that's the question that a lot of people ask, but feel like they have no hand in. So, Professor Mary and Bea, is there anything we can do to change the course of history?
Well, siguro, if you start small, let me just give you one example. Sa classic ko, last sem, nung nag-lockdown, lahat naka-lockdown. So, anong pwedeng field research na gawin? Not possible. So, sabi ko, then interview somebody in your own household. Baka yung lolo mo, yung lola mo, your katulong, did you ever talk to her about her life? Or your neighbor. Ayun, so ginawa yung mga ibang estudyante, and they were so astonished na, bakit pala yung lola ko, alam no? And then they discovered another world, no? And that's part of their family history. But siguro, if you really got many of those, that's part of Philippine history, no? So yung isang example lang yon. You can do something always. You have a special place in the world, no? Yung hahanapin mo lang. Okay, so, all right, let me go into what does it mean, looking at the bigger picture, no? Yung mga institutions natin, which now we're facing with iba ngayon because post-COVID, sabi na may new normal. Ano ba talagang yung new normal na yon, no? And yung mga iba sa amin, we're looking for a new transitional normal na bago talaga yung society. So you have to look at, okay, so yung mga institutions, you break it down. Oh, sa health. Ano mga issues sa health? Sa education, ang daming issues. So young people, lockdown, now having hard time in school. What are those issues now? Yung sa nutrition, bakit naman stunted? So many young people, young children, stunted by the age of 5. Ano, their brain is already affected, no? Are we creating a new group of lower level Filipinos? I mean, terrible thought, no? And it's all nutritional and care. So what are some of the problems that we face now in this new normal? Some of them are the same problems noong pa, but some of them have another nuance now. And you have a chance baka to change it because you know that something is really wrong. Like, talagang hindi tama and we should be able to do something, no? I mean, just an example yung mga communities that I know well, yung urban poor, nung sa lockdown sila, so they couldn't earn, and especially yung mga babae, the ladies. So yung some grupo, they were organized, they went to the Kapitan and said, hindi ba yung lote na sa kabila, na there's nobody, they're not using it. Can we use it? Can we go outside to use it to plant? So okay naman sa the barangay Kapitan as the owner of the lot, pwede din, but only 2 years, sabi niya, okay. Sabi niya, okay. So they planted and they grew a lot of vegetables. So kinain nila, they sold it. I mean, there are things that are happening all the time na bago. They would not have thought of that siguro nung wala pang COVID. Pero dahil sa lockdown, terrible situation, people think in new and creative ways. Yung mga emergencies make you think differently. So siguro ngayon, it's a kind of a general emergency still.
Yeah.
From before, yung poverty and now. Okay, so just again, to yung mga institutions, politics and governance, yung social media. Now here, wala akong expertise. So I'll leave that to Bea. But instead of looking only at the problems, globalization, climate change, you hear that all the time, poverty, conflict, violence. Yeah, those have to be dealt with. But let's not forget that people make solutions. And ano bang types of solutions happen? And one of the examples I just gave, that the women said we have to do something, and they thought of it and they solved it. No? So in the Philippines, so number one, civil society in the Philippines is very strong. Ano bang civil society? Yung mga people's organizations, yung mga community associations, yung mga NGO, yung faith-based groups, very active. I mean, Isak has many, many examples of people actively getting together to reach people who have less in life, in some ways, the empowerment nila. So there are so many, but it means you have to organize in groups. To be effective, you can do things on your own, yes. But when you find people who are similarly inclined, galit sila, why are the urban poor living in such terrible conditions? And so you organize people. Yes, we have to work with them to help them do something about it. We have connections with the government. Sige, connect. Right? So it's really coming together. People who have common concerns can find strengths in themselves just by talking to others who have the same I have what can I do to earn my place in history? It doesn't mean that everybody has to recognize you, but if you know it and your family knows it, your friends know it, your student friends know it, your neighbors, and wherever you are, everybody has a capacity to make a change. You just have to find out how to do it. So I think let me stop there because that's a challenge that I would give to all of those who are watching this program. And maybe Bea can start us off because she's much better able to talk to your generation than I.
But thank you so much, Professor Mary. I loved what you said about how people create solutions. And it made me remember actually during the pandemic, one of the most, I guess, prolific solutions that we had was the community pantry, right? That came from the grassroots, absolutely. And I knew that it was actually a young person that might have started that solution. And so that as a launch pad, Bea, I was wondering also what your thoughts are on regarding this, regarding the many problems that we're facing, and if it's any possible at all for us to change the course of history.
Alright. Siguro speaking from the perspective of the youth, no, I can say na the information that we have right now because of social media, ang dami. It's overwhelming. Personally, I was a kid that's very curious. Like lahat, everything. I would read everything I could get my hands on, and it was easy. Everything that you need to know is already outlined in the book, and you just have to memorize it. But by the time social media came, okay, boom, dami. From this one singular voice, now it's this symphony of voices, and hindi nga lang symphony of voices, it's also an orchestra of instruments that's either singing at you or like screaming at you, ang dami. And it's overwhelming and it's very hard to navigate through that. And, you know, that makes my generation definitely more susceptible to disinformation. And because of the fact na may disinformation, there's this level of doubt na sa'yo, na okay, maybe the things I'm reading are not true. So sometimes it can lead to distrust. And quite tragically, distrust leads to disconnect. Kasi lahat na there's this level of doubt in you na bawat bawat fact na natutunan mo pala noon, maybe hindi siya totoo. Because there's this other voices that are screaming at you, hey, listen to me. Then another guy says, listen to me, I've been marginalized. The government has been silencing me. So yun yung, I guess that's the context that I personally experienced as the like, growing up and learning about history and trying to navigate all through that information. And I guess one thing that we have to realize, no, like when we have to realize talaga that we are part of history. We have to realize and appreciate that history is not just like a one-man kind of show. At the end of the day, kunyari, we have heroes. We have Andres Bonifacio, Rizal, Ninoy Aquino, right? They didn't just function like in a vacuum. May mga taong nag-agree sa kanila. Yun nga yung sabi ni Prof. Mary, may mga taong sumuporta sa kanila. At may mga taong inayawan sila. And essentially, all those sentiments, collective sentiments, propelled them to our history books. And that's something that we have to realize if you do want to earn your place in history. And if you want really to be able to make that change, and kailangan you need collectives. And one way I believe that you can do that, if, for example, you have an advocacy, right, and you want to change history, kailangan you need to adjust to your audiences. So, for example, as I've mentioned, diba, like, as a communications major, like the one lesson that I learned is you need to meet your audience where they are. So, for example, if you're communicating with the youth like me, you guys have to understand na there's a lot of information out there. So, what is the best way to reach the youth? Diba? You have to penetrate through all of that information overload. And you really have to adjust it. There's this concept in climate change communication. And many people and experts point out that it's the flaw. It's the doom and gloom strategy. I think everyone has experienced or witnessed this naman. So for example, doom and gloom strategy po kasi it's essentially it says that the earth is dying. If you don't do this, do that, parang threat siya. Threat-based communication. And it has its flaws, definitely, because it leaves people helpless. It leaves people hopeless. So people are not inclined to participate na lang, leave it to the experts. Pero the main issue here is that strategy was used parang monolithic na siya. It felt like a one size fits all. But the thing is, perhaps in some audiences it may work. Pero maybe you can do that. Doom and gloom strategy, example, in one barangay it works, go do that if it works. Pero you have to understand that hindi iba-iba ang mga barangay. Iba-iba ang point of view ng mga tao. And So so perhaps if you want you know, that's what you have. Kailangan mong and aralin. Sino ba ang gusto mong makasama sa labanan?
Can I go of that?
Go for it. Go for it.
I give a we were asked by a group of social scientists if we could.
Oh, maybe we should take a pause, just because the audio is quite difficult. I don't know, Zara, if it's just me, but I can't.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's for both of us right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just wait, maybe give them a few minutes before the audio comes back on. I just
Sure.
really wanted to point out the thing that Bea was saying about how you need to ask yourself the question, no parang, kinino ba, ano yung tanong niya, yung parang, ano ba yung tinatayuan ko, or saan ba ako lumulugar sa
Mhm.
history? Was that something that you heard her say?
Yeah, but I think it was more of what I got from, or what I gathered from what she said, was that there's there are monolithic concepts, no? Yung monolithic, yung sobrang malaking konsepto na akala natin hindi na siya matitibag. Akala natin, kasi ganun na. So, wala nang ibang pwedeng gawin doon, wala nang mangyayari.
Mm-mm.
Or, yung history ay composed of only the heroes, di ba? So, yung mga kilala lang, si Jose Rizal, si Andres Bonifacio, pero yung nakuha ko sa sinabi niya is, hindi pala ganun. Kasi, meron tayo tao, hindi tayo nasusulat man, pero tayo yung nagiging paraan kung bakit yung mga naririnig natin ay nandun sa posisyon nila, or yung mga nangyaring mga ganap ay naganap, 'di ba? So, yun
Mm.
yun yung naintindihan ko, na parang minsan akala natin ang laki-laki na nung bagay, hindi na siya matitibag. Pero
Oo.
ano pala, parang may parte tayo doon, hindi lang natin siguro na nakikita, kasi sa laki ng hinaharap natin, nakakatakot din siyang tingnan. Parang gano'n, 'di ba, Naji?
Oo,
Yun yung yun
alright.
yung yun yung nakuha ko na na sinabi niya. Uy, Naji, meron din tayong tanong pala na nakuha natin sa ating isang listener,
Mhm.
watcher. Baka mamaya pagbalik nila, pwede nating itanong.
Oo, sige, let's do that. It's an interesting question. Let me just check back in with our speakers.
Okay.
Professor Mary and Bea, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Okay,
Great.
good. Okay.
Perfect.
Let's continue with that. I think Professor Mary, you wanted to add on to what Bea
Yeah. Okay. Some example, no?
was sharing a
You
while
have
ago.
to meet the people where they are. Okay. So sinabi na, so the DPWH wanted yung mga engineers nila to understand kung bakit naman ayaw ng mga tao to vacate their areas because they want to put a road in or kung ano yan, no? And then when they go there, may away and there's a barricada. So we said, all right, we did a seminar and we said, you have to, we will take you in groups of 10 to the communities mismo na we know they're organized and they have fought against eviction. We said, just listen to them, yung mga PO, leaders and yung mga tao doon. Just listen to them, their story. No? Ayun. So, and then sa hapon, they'll take you sa community, they'll show you, ayan, that's the day that you do. Ayun, ginawa nila yon. The next day, we said, feedback. Anong feedback? Yung mga engineers, sabi nila, kasi before, Vice says, before we did a review, a training assessment review, napaka-negative yung kanilang views of the urban poor. Yung mga tao yun, may napato kami and so on. Third, when they came back, anong feedback? They said, pala, pamilya din sila, no? Para sila, they're like us, sabi nila. hindi sila iba. Like they just like us. They want to make a better life for their children, where their security, where their job is. Tama naman yun, di ba? I would say the same thing. Just that, no, not even fantastic information on urban planning. Just listening to the people and appreciating their view was change their whole perspective. That's the way they listen, and you have to set it up in that case, but it can do wonders if people really talk to each other, as equals, and because they want to listen and they want to say also. Yeah.
I also have like an experience with that empathy-based communications talaga na like speaking the language of whoever you're trying to talk to. Kasi for example, in our student government assembly, it was historically students don't engage with the student government as people don't vote, people don't engage with the social media posts. It's like very separate sila. And during my time as vice chair and with my actual chair in the Sangguniang Department of Communications, what we did is we made the Sangguniang social media pages into an information hub. So, yun yung inisip namin. Maybe the students, what they want is information. And so what we did, nag-post kami ng memos ng school doon. We summarized the memos, posted it into infographics. Lahat ng announcement, suspension, nilagay namin sa Facebook page namin. And so, slowly, dumami yung audience namin because they were attracted. They needed information, punta sila sa amin. And by the time na kami naman po yung may i-announce, kami naman po yung may spread na advocacy, they were there. They were there to listen, to like our posts, and it comes with a basic understanding of social media din eh. The more that people visit your page because of the information, di ba, ipa-follow ka nila. And by the time na finollow ka nila, ayun, nakikita na nila sa timeline nila yung whatever we're trying to say. So I guess that's like one strategy talaga, no? You really have to connect at the end of the day to the people you're trying to talk to.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's good. I think I come from a background also of communication. And in addition to meeting the people where they are, learning their history, learning what's important to them, you also have to have a clear goal. What is the message that you want to tell them? And I think that's what's actually being weaponized now. Diba? Yung sinasabi mo kanina, Bea, na ang dami ng misinformation na pinifeed na rin ng mga I guess the people in power who know what might tickle your fancy and then use whatever story to deal or achieve their own goals. No? So I think it's very important, and thank you talaga for both of you kasi ang clear, or at least it was a thoughtful and organized approach to change making, that we know that we have problems. Civil society is there. We, even as ordinary people, have a way to make our presence felt in history, even if, for example, hindi na pupunta yung mga pangalan natin sa history books. Pero meron tayong role to do that. So thank you for helping us think a little bit more critically, that we need to see ourselves as people who are moving in history and shaping history as well. So, dako lang ako sa isa pang topic, no? For specifically, I think for those who have been in the change-making process, or someone who for people who have been trying to affect change, whether that's in the academe, whether that's in communications or business or media, right? I think Isaac as an organization, as a movement, has been trying to also communicate the truth, or at least facts lang, para maybe the people who listen can make their own decisions based on their values also. Sa akin, yung next question ko dito is, and I think connected to sa question ni Veronica, no? I think maybe we can put that in. Veronica asks, so if people who are in change making, we know that the process is slow, right? So it's a slow process, and maybe this is more for Bea nga, actually. So Bea, keep this at the back of your mind. How do we sustain engagement in change making or the movement of change making among young people who might be impatient and want to see change happen right now. So that's one question, diba? What are the things that we can do to help sustain that effort when we want to see change now? And that's usually not the reality of it. So that's a question for you specifically, Bea, and maybe even Professor Mary, but also how do we continue working in change or working for change without turning away or becoming cynical? How do you keep the integrity of the work that we do? This is for both of you. I think those things are connected. And maybe you have insight or things that you wish more people knew about also.
Siguro no, like how do we sustain change that when we want change now? That's quite a hard question. Because when you're in the development field, di ba, Prof. Mary, like one of the things that's first taught to you talaga is change is slow and it's hard. And at some point, you need to embrace that and welcome that. Na you need to accept then na there are certain parts na ito lang yung role mo. And by the next time, it's time for the youth to come in and chime in. It's hard talaga. That's why I think we cannot function alone. If we want to make change now, we cannot function alone. We need to connect with other people talaga. And siguro one example that I can think of, na they were somehow successful, no? Like two examples. Number one, dun sa the Sibuyan mining issue ngayon. The people there, they made a barricade. They have their local councilors. Everybody chimed in there. Napaka-creative ng protest nila. They even parang there's somebody that even wrote a song for to fight yun nga yung the mining corporation, the anti-mining corporation there. And they were somewhat successful. The DENR sided with them. So, you know, very important if unified talaga kayo. You have a clear goal, everybody is willing to participate. Yung second example, this one recently lang din. Di ba, the Makati, they wanted to turn the bike lanes into sharrows. So sharrows, these are shared lanes. So lahat ng PUV, bicycle, lahat sila sama-sama in one lane. And syempre, that's very dangerous for a biker. Kasama mo yung mga malalaking vehicle. And you know, in less than 48 hours, the biking community was able to stage a bike around in Makati. They were able to secure the permits, the necessary permits. Meron na silang pub mats. Nakapag-post sila on social media. They were very angry in Twitter and they did that in less than 48 hours. Actually, the moment nag-announce si Makati, biglang nakita ko na lang may Viber group na, may statement na, they sent letters na to the local government there. Ang dami. And what's the lesson there? We know that the biking community is very united sila, very connected sila. They have a Discord community. I know kasi I'm an aspiring, gusto ko rin mag-bike pero natatakot ako kasi wala pang bike lane sa amin. So I was invited to the Discord, I was invited to the Viber group chat, then you see, may jam board pa sila. And that's what you get talaga eh. If you want change now, you need to you need to connect talaga with the people that you think are gonna help you, and you need to unite talaga with the other people with the same interests as you.
Right. You know, if I can add something there, just from my own long, many years in working with urban poor communities in particular, I began because I was already doing research in a low-income neighborhood, not informal settlement, but of Tondo. That was my kind of first big research. And I got, I wrote it up in academic journals. It was published in a book. Well, okay, academic, yeah. And then yung mga organizers, na I knew some of them from the informal settlement next door sa Tondo Foreshore, said, Mary, bakit naman yun lang ginagawa mo? It's like you're speaking for the poor or for us, no? And nice that you're sympathetic and bringing out the people's voices, the research mo. But dapat yung mga people themselves should be bringing out their voices. So, baka, I said, so what do you want me to do? Just come and listen to us, see what we are, and doon ako na, that's where also the transformation, they know so much. It's just if they need to get together and they get more learning from different NGOs and others who want to tell them what they need to do because they want to do this and they provide. But that's, I think, the inspiration of seeing how dynamic people can be when they're organized, when they have a vision of the future, which is non-violent. That's one thing was very strong. Ayon. So all these years, I've been with the urban groups, we're expanding, organizing, pero it's so slow talaga. They made victories here and there, but small victories first, changing the system, and it works because when they mobilize or when they discuss, negotiate from a point of power, they are very, when they speak, the authorities are always so surprised na, aba, wala naman, they're low education, pero, they really know their stuff. Then, the respect, yun ang importante, respeto para sa kanila, and that comes to that kind of interaction. Anyway, just to not belabor this, but I've seen this now, 60 years siguro, no? And the pace is very slow. It's necessary, but what made the changes was people were organized at grassroots for themselves to speak, to know the issues, NGOs help, academics help, but still they have to be in the forefront. And when they mobilize, when hindi naman necessarily protest marches, although that's always a possibility, but when they go and talk to an institution and say, alam nyo, what you're saying we can afford to pay for this housing, the social housing, wala, we cannot afford that. Only 10% can afford to pay 2,000 a month or 2,500, which is the basic monthly. Hindi pwede yun, So then there's a negotiation and little by little things change. But to me, what makes government really change, the people in power, is if those to whom they are accountable really organize and they need the information, And ngayon, may social media now. That's why it's fantastic because they all have cell phones. Almost everybody has a cell phone. May messenger naman sila. So you can transmit information now. And that's sort of the new challenge sa mga organizing is to bring in people like you and Bea and those who are online to say, how can we enable information to reach those who can make whose issue it is. It's their issue. They have to be the ones, and they must be armed with the information needed to make their point. And there are people in government. I mean, we shouldn't, say everybody in government is hopeless. No, there are many who really want solutions. You have to find it. If you have the evidence and if you push, they will often respond.
Yeah, sorry, add lang. It's really about the small wins, no? When you look at history from tawag dito, from a faraway perspective, you realize that change, di talaga siya na-happen na snap of finger. For example, change talaga, when you look at it, unti-unti pala talaga siya nangyayari. And by the time that you look at it from the history books, akala mo mabilis lang. And yun nga, what I mentioned with the Ayala bike lanes, the Makati bike lanes, with the bikers being united alongside with commuters, ayun, na postpone yung paggagawa ng shallows. And similar to the Altai Mining Corporation, diba? Na-postpone din yung kanilang operations. So you have to appreciate those small wins. If the overall change that you want to happen, doesn't happen now, you have to hold out hope na there are small wins, at least, na nangyayari right now.
Just let me add one thing, because the Kaliwa Dam people, the IPs, are the Dumagat Remontados, who have been struggling with the issue of being able to stay on their site, their rights, and the environment is being destroyed if there's a dam built. There is a huge coalition against the dam, but government seems to be very determined to build it. So the people themselves, yung mga of the Remontado, are now marching together with many supporters For 10 days, they're going to reach Manila. They're going to stay at the Ateneo, I think. But they're here to talk to the MWSS, which is insisting of the dam, and they've asked to see the president, I think on February 23rd. Now, let's hope that our president really does listen. You know, he's been abroad, he's listened to everybody there, they've heard him. Okay, so now he says he's back and he's not going to travel much. Wonderful. Now, here are these communities that are dying to have him come and visit them, listen to them. So we hope that's a challenge that everybody can encourage. That they, not that the president always has to be one to solve the problem, but that this gets raised to a political circle which is sympathetic to the issues of the disadvantaged groups, of which there are so many, too many in this country.
Wow. Thank you. I've been hanging on to your every word and would love to hear more. But unfortunately, we're keeping mind of our time. But before that, I'd really like to highlight no yung sinabi niyo po na grassroots. Parang yun yung naririnig po na theme na change starts small and that we shouldn't discount the small wins, but also that the real change happens at the grassroots level. And so to the question nga na tinanong kanina ni Veronica, the answer to that is to those young people who may be impatient and want to see change right away. Ang sabi po ni Prof. Mary ay 60 years na siya dito nagtatrabaho sa development. Mabagal talaga ang change. But Bea says that we should also have hope na what we're doing today sa grassroots, let's get connected. If we're not the organizers, let's get connected, let's participate because change can happen and it has happened and we see examples of that, even recent examples like in Makati. And so thank you guys for that. But because this is all the time we have for this week, and there's so many things I know we can still talk about. So hopefully we can invite you guys for another round of discussions, especially on communication and the development sector. But for tonight, can you share with us any final thoughts or what do you wish more people knew about history and change making? Prof. Mary, maybe you can go first and then we can end with Bea.
Well, there are many things I could say, but I can't resist a quote that I wanted to communicate, no? Especially for this audience, the Isak audience especially. A person who said, in relation to change, I think of the New Testament story of the woman with an issue of blood, specifically of her hand reaching out into the clutter and chaos of a crowd, not sure that she would reach Christ, but nonetheless reaching for him in hope. Her story is sacred to me because she truly believed that by reaching outside of the bounds that her culture had set for her, perhaps even the bounds she had set for herself, she could be made whole. And that's what we're talking about, that all of us are made whole individually, but in our groups, family, and in society, because we come together in a common dream. That's what I would like to say.
Siguro like another point that I'd like to point out, if we want to make change, no. So this is a new framework that I learned like in the past 2 years. It's hope-based communications. I highly recommend na we for the audience out there to look that up. Hope-based communication. So it's this new framework talaga that actually masyadong mahaba siya if I could try to discuss it in whole. But essentially, it's this it's like the opposite of the doom and gloom strategy. So hindi siya threat ngayon. So now you want to encourage people to envision the world they want to see. And the next key thing to that is you have to provide actionable points for everyone to how they can participate. So you don't just throw your problems out there. You don't just give them the analysis. Okay, yun, di ba yung analysis paralysis? So hindi lang yun. So when you try to communicate, when you try to share an advocacy, you have to list down to the youth, your audience, what can they do to participate? Yun nga yung sabi natin at the grassroots. For example, very simple lang. Are there any organizations that they can join in? Are there any projects that they can participate in? Are there like research gaps that they can do research in? So, very simple. Are there like people they can consult, experts? Maraming pwedeng gawin na like unti-unti nagiging part ka na ng history even in your small ways. And yun yung unang thing na gusto ko rin talagang ma-realize if you want to be change makers. You have to create spaces and opportunities for people to participate. And second, as a change maker, you also have to take care of yourself. Honestly, I'm laughing because that's still something that I'm still trying to learn, especially with the youth, no? With all the mental health issues na talagang very prevalent in our generation. And you really have to take care of yourself at the end of the day. And with that, you need a support system. Um, it's very hard when you're dealt with all the negativity. You absorb all of the problems. You analyze them, and then you try to make solutions. It's a heavy thing to experience, and I honestly experienced it like last semester. But naisip ko nga ang daming taong tumulong sa akin. And isa na yun si Prof. Mary, like when I asked for extension ng deadlines, ganyan, my other professors, and my friends. So, yung naisip ko talaga, like, where would I be if not for the kindness of the people around me? So, ayun, like, as change makers talaga, you need to look hindi lang for the people that are interested in whatever you're interested, but also people who are willing to support you. So ayun, no, you have to form communities of support, like on both a personal level and the societal level. And I think when we're able to do that, when you form communities na they're gonna help you, and then on a societal level, community na same kayo ng advocacy so that you can fight as a collective. When you're able to do that, I think you're already one step ahead from the people who are trying to alter history for their self-interest. So, ayun lang, I guess, from me.
Wow. Naji, how are you there?
I know.
Grabe.
I'm glad that I know both of these ladies offline because we might have to take this conversation offline. I have so many. My heart is bursting. This is really close to what's important to me, no? And so
Yeah.
I think that before we just wrap this up, I really do want to give my gratitude. I know that we barely scratched the surface, and the
Yeah.
amount of experience that you both have and with Bea coming in also, I have a lot of hope. I think that in our culture, I think Professor Mary shared about that woman who reached out to Jesus, um, sort of transcending whatever culture that was set before her, whether that society setting that on her or herself setting those boundaries or no setting those limitations basically, and still reaching out. I think when you look at that in the Filipino context, I've had a lot of people share with me that people who work in development, people who try to do good or to see the kingdom come, um, to see shalom happen on earth here, it's so useless. It's so you're basically throwing your life away because it's not gonna happen. And I think opposite of that, I think because we are people of faith, because we know that one day soon all things will be made new, we're working towards that. We're seeing redemption and looking at the kingdom from those eyes. And so I know that perhaps in the end, the work that we're doing, the 60 years that Professor Mary has poured out of her life, the X amount of years perhaps that Bea will will
Will
pour
be
out
pouring out.
will be pouring out of her life. These things are seen by our Lord, and the beautiful thing that Bea said is that we're not doing it out of our own self interest. We know that this is
Mm.
something that will serve others in the long run, not just our present, but even the generations after us. We were trying to help flesh out the gospel that we know so clearly and dearly. Something that is true for us personally can be seen in society also. So what about you, Zara? I can't. We should keep talking about this. Talaga. I can't. Parang, ano.
Bea, narinig mo na, Bea, you're coming back. Si Prof. Mary is a given. But Bea, that was so lovely, Bea. Thank you so much for sharing about hope-based communication. You know, I just want to add to that, kasi I was reading Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown, no? And she says something very interesting. She observed that hope is not actually a feeling, it's a way of thinking. She even goes on to describe it as like a framework, as if it's the fuel that gives us the ability to set goals, to create actionable steps to achieve those goals, and the feeling that we can actually achieve them, right? And so I think that if we're able to look at the world with those lenses, right? And step back from the idea of history as being created by larger than life individuals by themselves, or monolithic beliefs. As you mentioned earlier, Bea, about how climate change was communicated, that it was already there and there's nothing I can do. Hindi ko na yan matitibag kasi andyan na yan. Ang liit-liit ko, ang laki-laki ng nangyayaring gulo. Yun, wala eh. Hindi natin maiisip na meron pa tayong maiko-contribute or maidadagdag sa story ang yan. Pero sa gabing ito, ang nakita ko talaga is ito eh, na okay, meron tayong istorya, pero hindi pa siya tapos. At ang dapat nating maalaala na nandito tayo sa mundong ito ngayon, meron pa tayong magagawa kahit saan man tayo na nalagay o anong ginagawa natin, dapat mag-participate tayo kasi kung ang change naman pala ay galing sa grassroots, tayo yun eh. Tayo yun. And so, thank you, Prof. Mary, thank you, Bea, for just showing us that, yeah, change is slow, yeah, change is hard, yeah, it's almost impossible to see it in a lifetime, but we will need to look at the small wins in order to fuel this drive to continue changing. And hopefully, if we do that together, we would be able to see the tides of change turn for our history. And thank you, Naji. I loved how you talked about hope as being something that a Christian also is truly called to live out, because in the end, all of us are called to live in view of eternity. The world we are in now, we are here to be salt and light. We are here to be voices and even to speak for the oppressed or those who do not have voices. But in the end, we also need to remember that we are living here, but this is not our home, and we are called to live in view of eternity. And that should give us hope that we can look forward to a city whose foundations and builder is God. And so with that, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. This was such an enlivening conversation, a hopeful conversation, and we hope that everyone felt it, that we are invigorated, that we feel that, yes, I can participate. Sana po ay bumalik kayo next time. Meron po kaming show na iniisip para sa inyo sa March 9, same time, 7 p.m. And if you want to look back to the previous episodes, nasa Spotify na po kami. Hanapin nyo lang ang Conversations on Faith and Society, Isip Isak. And if you want to check out our videos naman, nasa Facebook page lang namin. Thank you everyone. Salamat po and have a good evening.